Welcome back to another episode of Shawn, Thinking Out Loud. I'm your host, Shawn Armstrong, and today we're diving deep into a topic that's been on my mind lately: the power of information and how it shapes our understanding of the world. In this digital age, knowledge is literally at our fingertips, but not all information is created equal. Some facts are solid and well researched, while others are more like urban legends, great for storytelling but lacking in substance. Today we'll discuss critical thinking and some pervasive myths that still circulate in our society. Buckle up. First off, let's talk about the power of information. We live in an age where knowledge is at our fingertips. With just a few taps on our phones, we can access a wealth of information. But here's the catch. Not all information is created equal. Some of it is solid and well researched, while other bits are more like urban legends, great for storytelling but lacking in substance. Take my own experience. For example, over the years, I've delved into a wide range of topics, from politics and history to martial arts and firearms. Each book I've written has taught me something new and challenged my perspectives. And you know what? It's this very journey that has sparked my interest in critical thinking. Let's tackle a few common myths that many people believe. For instance, one particular myth is that humans only use 10% of their brains. This has been debunked numerous times by neuroscientists who affirm that virtually every part of the brain has a known function. So where did this myth come from? It's believed to have originated from misinterpretations of neurological research in the early 20th century. Now, consider this. When someone casually mentions that it's already been debunked, it raises an important question. Are they truly informed? Or are they simply repeating what they've heard without doing their homework? All Trump's voters are the N-word. First, there hasn't been one of those since probably the 1970s hiding in South America. These idiots today aren't. They're idiots wearing memorabilia, screaming and shouting. Do you know the difference between them and Antifa or BLM? Nothing. They're all borderline retarded. Except I have to give BLM credit. They know how to run a scam. They're all millionaires now, with mansions. Got to give credit where credit is due. The only people who are that good at grifting are, well, in Congress. This brings me to my next point, the responsibility we carry in sharing information. Before passing something along, ask yourself, do I understand the facts? Can I provide sources or evidence? If not, maybe it's best to hold back. Let me share a quote by Thomas Jefferson. The most valuable gift you can give someone is your knowledge, even if it triggers them. I just added that. This sentiment reminds us that sharing accurate information is crucial, not just for ourselves, but for our communities as well. And here's a fun fact. Did you know the term myth comes from the Greek word mythos, meaning story? It shows how intertwined storytelling is with our understanding of reality. We love stories. They shape our perspectives and beliefs, but let's strive to ensure those stories are grounded in truth. Over the years, I've seen the left continue to idolize Obama, almost if he was some kind of sainted figure in American history. But is that really the case? Today, we'll explore the policies, decisions, and overall impact of his presidency, and trust me, I've got a lot of material to cover from his second election alone. For those who don't know, I have a background in various topics: politics, history, even martial arts and firearms, you name it. So let's get into it. Let's start with a little context. Obama took office in 2009 during one of the worst financial crises in American history. He promised change and hope. But did he deliver? First off, let's look at the Affordable Care Act. While it was dubbed Obamacare and hailed as a monumental achievement for health care access, did it really help? It led to increased premiums and limited options for millions of Americans. Sure, some people gained coverage, but at what cost? I'm still forced to pay for it out of my Social Security disability. And I don't even live in the United States. Also, I had free health care from the Veterans Administration. So they're taking money out of my pocket that I put in years ago to pay for insurance I don't need. Way to vote, morons. Now let's pivot to foreign policy. The withdrawal from Iraq and the handling of the Syrian crisis have faced heavy criticism. Some have argued that these decisions created power vacuums leading to chaos. The rise of ISIS didn't just happen overnight. And how about the economy? While Obama often touts job growth during his administration, many of those jobs were part-time or minimum wage positions. It's a complicated picture that doesn't fit neatly into the narrative of Obama the savior. But before I go too far down the rabbit hole, let's take a moment to reflect on what makes a president truly good or bad. Is it their policies, their charisma, or is it something deeper? Here's a quote by Thomas Jefferson that I think fits perfectly. The government you elect is the government you deserve. So, if we're disillusioned with our leaders, perhaps we should take a closer look at ourselves as voters. And here's a fun fact. Did you know that Obama was the first sitting president to publicly support same-sex marriage? It's a prime example of how public opinion can shift dramatically during a presidency. Now, on to my old buddy Bob, complaining again. Now, before we jump into the meat of the discussion, let's set the stage. Since the late 1970s, the income disparity in America has skyrocketed. While workers have seen their wages barely keep pace with inflation, CEOs have been raking in record high salaries. Bob, as I affectionately call him, points fingers at this gap, but here's an interesting twist. He was in a position to make changes when he served as labor secretary during the Clinton administration. It raises the question, if he had such strong opinions back then, why didn't he advocate for reforms that could have addressed these disparities? And while we're at it, what about the tax policies that could have encouraged wage growth for the average American? For instance, during Trump's administration, we saw a tax cut that raised wages by 3%. Yet under Biden, many households lost an average of $2,300 in median income. What does this all mean? Let's break this down. First off, Reich's critiques are valid in many ways. CEO pay has indeed surged, while average workers are left scrambling to make ends meet. But here's where it gets tricky. When you see people who are effectively costing you money, the CEOs in question, complaining about income inequality while they're sitting on golden parachutes, it begs the question, are they genuinely concerned about workers or simply deflecting blame? Furthermore, it's essential to understand that policies enacted by those in power can significantly influence those outcomes. When Clinton was in office, the economy did well, but many argue that he could have leveraged his position to address wage stagnation more directly. Now, let's look at Trump. His administration implemented tax cuts that were touted as beneficial for workers. Did they work? The statistics would say yes. A report by the IRS corroborates his assertion. And with Biden's tenure showing a decline in household income, it feels like we're caught in a cycle of blame without solutions. Here's a quote from Reich himself that I found quite telling. The problem is not just income inequality, it's also political inequality. That's a profound observation when those with power and money dictate policies that favor their interests over those of everyday Americans. Under President Joe Biden, median household income saw a decline of $2,300. Meanwhile, during Donald Trump's administration, wages increased by over 3%. These statistics beg the question, what's really happening in our economy, and do these figures affect you and me? But first, let's take a moment to unpack where these numbers come from and why they matter. Now, before we go too far, I want to acknowledge a key player in this narrative, former Labor Secretary Bob. It seems he might have forgotten his role when discussing economic growth. As Labor Secretary, his job was to advocate for and measure wage increases. If wages were indeed rising under Trump, shouldn't he be at the forefront of celebrating that? Or did he let a serious case of TURD, Trump unacceptance and resistance disorder, get in the way of his, quote, love, unquote, for the working man? The point here is to understand that these figures don't exist in a vacuum. They reflect broader economic policies and conditions. For example, Trump's tax cuts aimed at stimulating the economy may have contributed to those wage increases. On the flip side, Biden's approach had been focused on recovery post-pandemic, which involved different challenges altogether. Let's talk about implications. A drop in median household income can have ripple effects on consumer confidence, spending habits, and overall economic growth. When households feel the pinch, they tend to tighten their belts, and that can slow down the economy even further. And it's essential to remember that these numbers are not just statistics. They represent real people facing real struggles. Here's an interesting quote from economist Milton Friedman. Inflation is taxation without legislation. This perfectly encapsulates how economic policies can impact everyday lives, often without us even realizing it. And here's a fun fact for you. Did you know that in Brazil during the 20th century, hyperinflation reached as high as 2,500%? Now that's a different level of economic chaos. And now Memorial Day. Memorial Day, observed on the last Monday of May, is a day dedicated to honoring those who have made the ultimate sacrifice while serving in the armed forces. But as we gather with friends and family, fire up the grill and enjoy a long weekend, we sometimes forget that this is a solemn occasion for many. For some, it's a day filled with grief and remembrance. So today, let's unpack that Memorial Day really means and why we should approach it with a sense of respect and reflection. First off, let's address the elephant in the room, the phrase Happy Memorial Day. While it's meant to convey goodwill, it can be jarring for those who are mourning. We need to remember that for many families, this day is a painful reminder of their loss. It's essential to shift our perspective from celebration to commemoration. One thing I find fascinating is how different communities honor this day. For example, in Washington, D.C., there's the National Memorial Day concert that brings together music and storytelling to pay tribute to fallen heroes. It's a beautiful way to connect through art while remembering the sacrifices made. And let's not forget the history behind Memorial Day. It originated after the Civil War to honor Union soldiers, but has since evolved to commemorate all American military personnel who have died in all the wars. This transformation reflects the broader narrative of our nation's history, reminding us of the sacrifice made across generations. Here's a powerful quote from President Ronald Reagan. "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same." This quote resonates deeply on Memorial Day as we honor those who fought for our freedom. Did you know that the tradition of decorating graves on Memorial Day dates back to 1868? It was initially called Decoration Day, where people would place flowers on the graves of soldiers. That's a beautiful representation of love and remembrance that we can carry forward. To wrap things up, we've examined how misinformation spreads and our responsibility in sharing accurate information. We've also reflected on Obama's presidency and its complexities, reminding ourselves that public figures are often more nuanced than they appear. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Shawn Thinking Out Loud. If you enjoyed this discussion or found it thought-provoking, please share it with friends or leave a comment. And don't forget to check out my audiobooks available through the links in the description, covering everything from politics and history to martial arts and firearms. Until next time, keep questioning what you know and seek out the truth. Take care.